Adam ran through the house. He tasted blood in his mouth. Clutched in his tiny fingers was his tooth. "Oh, it fell out," his mother cooed. "Remember to put it under your pillow tonight, and the tooth fairy will pay you a visit." Smiling, Adam did as instructed. As he put his head down, something slipped through the window. It smiled as it surveyed the room. Welcome to Mythical Phylogeny Adventures. I'm your guide, Jason. Today, we are looking at the strange little tooth fairy. Let's see if we can find out its odd little origins. I'm sure most of you can remember losing your tooth and being told to put it under your pillow for the tooth fairy to sneak in at night and exchange it for some money. It sounds like a cute and harmless little game, does it not? The idea of a fairy coming to trade your lost teeth for money can help put to ease a child's fears as their teeth fall out and go through this strange change in their life. There is some disagreement on what it looks like, usually described as a small humanoid of only a few inches tall with wings, sometimes closer to human size. Most people view the tooth fairy as predominantly female. Whether a single individual or a whole race is not certain. Well, the origins of the tooth fairy aren't so pretty and clear-cut. There aren't any hard and decisive answers here. Doubly so when we look at human interactions with other fairy creatures, such as the child-napping changelings we just covered. I mean, why invite a fairy into your house to take a tooth when others are stealing children and putting their own in the bed? That seems like a massive logical inconsistency, does it not? The tooth fairy seems to originate in 1908 in the Chicago Daily Tribune, but became a play in 1927 called The Tooth Fairy, a 3-act playlet for children. But that doesn't tell us the origin. Sadly, there isn't a hard connection in any other mythology. Due to the influx of European immigrants, we can assume the original root of the tooth fairy is in Europe, but none of them have an exact match, only partial ones. In many legends, witches will use teeth and hair to lay spells upon a person. Because of this, many cultures seek to dispose of their baby teeth. Either burning them or swallowing them is common. Another speaks of burying them in the garden to encourage your adult teeth to grow in straight. So protecting your baby teeth was common, but there are other ways. In England, it was believed that it could be hard to pass on to the afterlife if the teeth were still tying you to the mortal realm. Thus, they sought to destroy them. Such beliefs are thought to be part of the final remnants of the old pagan beliefs. One spoke of coating the tooth in salt and placing it in a glass by the child's bedside. Salt was often seen as a purifier and a protective barrier against harmful magic and witches. This is the inversion of the witch using the tooth to curse the child. As a protective measure, parents would often place something iron under their pillow to protect them. But there is another more common one: placing your tooth by a mouse hole so that it will eat it. The Bon Petit Souris, or the Good Little Mouse, is a French story about a pregnant queen who was taken prisoner by an evil king after he slew her husband. The evil king decided that if she had a daughter, she would marry his son to help legitimize his rule over her lands. But if a boy, both the queen and the child would perish. As she awaited her fate in the dungeon, there was a little mouse. The queen would hide the mouse and even share a portion of her meager meals with it. But this was no mouse, but a fairy. It would hide under the evil king's pillow and steal his teeth at night, before eventually helping the queen and her newborn daughter escape to safety. Okay, we can use that to explain placing it under the pillow. But why a fairy and not a toothed mouse then? Wouldn't that make sense, partially? Well, there is another influence from Norse mythology. The god Freyr was given control of Alfheim, the land of the elves in the Poetic Edda, an important piece of Norse literature and legends. Among these elves is the Tandfey. Sometimes Freyr is called one. The Tandfey will give a gift to a child losing their first tooth. Other cultures say it is their sixth tooth, but that is an elf, not a fairy. Now elves come from Germanic and Norse mythology. They are described as spirits, often associated with nature. They are said to have magical powers and unnatural beauty. As the languages evolved, the word for elf diverged, giving rise to Zwerg, meaning dwarf, secretive forest creatures called Holdra, and the word fairy coming from French and Celtic influences, and goblins have spread forth. So our tooth fairy is a combination of the Tandfey and the good little mouse fairy. That seems to be the most logical explanation, the hybridization of multiple myths. Slowly, the number of payment for teeth increased from just one to for each of them. Now, as to why the tooth fairy would make such a trade. Could the tooth be a bribe to keep the fairy from interfering with the child? With the salt most likely, but just placed under your pillow, and it gives money in return? No, something else is going on. Remember how I spoke of a mouse chewing on and eating teeth? Well, mice will chew on harder objects to help keep their teeth short and healthy. It is possible that fairies do the same. But there is another, more likely option, calcium in particular. It is important to maintaining strong bones and other bodily functions. So that could be an explanation. If the fairies need the calcium, being able to buy it from humans could be feasible. It would help to produce a relationship between the two races. But how do they get the money? Are they stealing it from humans? Collecting it from lost humans? Payment for their other helpful acts? Perhaps. Yet in a fantasy world, why would humans permit and encourage such an arrangement? If they are trying to protect their child from being taken, why invite another in? This can be seen as contradictory. One option is that the tooth fairy is a different species than those that take children. But how does this fairy sneak into the house? The window or chimney would be most likely. The latter is difficult due to fairies having a weakness to fire. That means the window or door, squeezing through the cracks, or using their magic to create an opening. How does it know when you put a tooth under the pillow? Does it have a spell to locate such teeth? Well, you normally wouldn't put a tooth under a pillow, would you? That could be seen as an invitation that allows the fairy to enter the house more easily and triggers a detection spell. The tooth fairy seems silly, but has a rather dark and complicated origin, coming from several different myths. Is the tooth fairy a danger to your family? Probably not. This one doesn't seek to harm anyone, at least not on the surface. But we do have at least one which wasn't so nice. Our little good mouse fairy. How do you protect yourself from tooth fairies like that? I talked about placing something iron under your pillow to protect against fairies. That is what you should do here. Or go to the extreme and sleep in an iron helmet. But there are other options. Coating a little salt on your teeth will help protect them. You should also place salt around the windowsills and door. But is that just being overprotective? Or are you really in danger? You'll need to watch for signs of unusual activity. People hearing voices, things disappearing or moving. This fairy is all about stealth. It won't be seen or felt. It will only approach you while you sleep. So don't sleep. Then you are safe. Then you'd eventually suffer all the side effects of sleep deprivation. That won't go well. When you do finally fall asleep, have others in the room to watch out for the fairy. But if you do find yourself in a fight, what should you do? Iron armor is going to be the best, regardless of chainmail or plate. The same for weapons. Fairies are fast, so pick a faster weapon, something that you can use in one hand with quick motions. Magic is another option. Protective spells and wards to keep you safe. Fire spells will offer you the best defense, but a quick ice spell can immobilize it. Overall, this isn't a difficult fight, and not one you are likely to get into a fight with, and I'm only giving the Tooth Fairy a 1 in 10 for difficulty. It should be more than easy enough to avoid the fight, if you aren't foolish enough to start one. There is much to be gained from the Tooth Fairy, namely payment for something that you won't need anymore, your baby teeth. I'm sure everyone could use a little more money in tough times. Shame that there isn't a hair or nail fairy. Those could last much longer, but probably has a pretty low rate to pay. Now, the going rate for teeth is complicated, going from a few cents to dollars depending on location and potential tooth quality, number of cavities, and tooth size. The inconsistency in the pay scale for teeth may indicate that there are multiple tooth fairies, but it could also mean that the fairies don't have any concept about the value of money. It is highly possible that they just give whatever they happen to have on them. For their society, it could mean a few issues with transactions and trade, or that they just don't understand human currency. Either could create complications between trade between humans and fairy populations. Adam awoke early in the morning. It took a minute before his brain remembered the tooth. He slid his hand under the pillow and found a tiny bronze coin. Clutching it in his hand, he smiled. It wasn't much, but the start. Given a few more, and he could save up for something nice. Using his tongue, he felt about for any other teeth ready to fall out. None yet, but he could be patient. If not, he could pull another out with a door and some string. Oh, it would hurt, but that was all. The Tooth Fairy is a funny little creature, with complicated origins drawing from multiple sources. It comes off as a strange contradiction to how other fairies interact with humans. This is a good fairy. Thank you for watching, adventurers. Please return next week, where we shall handle the Calupiluit. Until then, I'll see you on the roads.